Hello. I wasn't going to do this, but I've realised I can't resist. If you see me doing a video with these glasses on and you're not interested in very old, or maybe not so old, Doctor Who fiction that is possibly difficult to track down, just skip these videos. I'll get back to talking about Varos next time, all four of you. This is for me. Obviously, this is a fairly private thing which I'm sharing with the internet, and it's this. Obviously, Doctor Who being 60, the most exciting thing in the entire history of the world. And it's my own little personal, private celebration after a year of reading. If you've not picked this up yet, I'm a librarian. Reading all sorts of stuff. I've read so many books this year. It's been absolutely magnificent. For the rest of the year, I'm just reading Doctor Who books. And that's my own private little celebration. That's what I'm doing. And I'm going to read one per Doctor. And I've just finished my Hartnell one. And I've really enjoyed it. And it's made me reflect on Hartnell. So I'm going to just talk about that for a little bit. Just skip this if you're not interested. That is fine. The story I've read is this one. It is called Venusian Lullaby by Paul Leonard. It was one of the Virgin Missing Adventures. In fact, I think it was the third one. It was published way back in 1994 when I would have been 16 years old. This may well have been at the point in my life when I kind of lost touch with Doctor Who a little bit. And I don't think I've ever read it before. I certainly don't remember it very well, if I have. In fact, I don't remember it at all. And it's basically the story of where the Doctor finally manages to steer the TARDIS. Susan's just been booted out of the TARDIS. And he finally manages to steer the TARDIS for the first time since we've known him. And he lands on Venus, way back when, before even we, as a species, or any life had developed on the Earth. And he's just with Ian Barbara. He's visiting the funeral of an old Venusian friend of his. The Venusians are whopping, great big, multi-legged, multi-eyed, multi-mouthed, amiable creatures. Quite sweet, really. And Paul Leonard, the author, paints an interesting culture. The Venusians are allergic to metal, so they've only developed in rather peculiar ways, cul-de-sac type ways, I suppose. But what's interesting is they're going to die out because the Venus is getting too hot, and as a result, a group of aliens come. I can't pronounce these aliens' names, and they offer to take them to another planet. They take them to another planet, but the trick is they're actually going to eat them and use them as fertilizer for another planet, which is cracking recycling. But there we go. So we get these amiable, buffoonish. That's a bit harsh, actually. Venusians who have a culture of eating their dead because it helps them remember them. Literally, they remember them. They take on some of the memories. Well, Barbara has a good old nosh on a dead Venusian and actually, semi-turns into them. And it was the guy in charge of the Venusian in charge of the Venusians. Then later on, Ian eats a Venusian child because some children get slaughtered by the Venusians themselves. This goes to dark places, this book. Anyway, I've had a lovely time reading this book. It's made me reflect on a couple of things. I think principally like the Hartnell's relationship with Ian and Barbara. Do you remember all the way back then? Maybe you've watched them more recently than I have. I fell deeply in love with Ian and Barbara all over again. I'll confess Susan left me a bit cold, I think. And I think things picked up with Vicky. But those Ian and Barbara, what cracking companions they were. What's really charming about this book is, and I would like to go back and actually pick through them again. But this takes place after the Dalek invasion of Earth, and then we would move on to the rescue and then the Romans. I seem to recall that Ian and Barbara did chill out to a certain extent after that. I suppose the rescue is quite a laid-back story, isn't it? And the Romans is clearly a laid-back story. But this is a book that I think explores why they would kick back. And Paul Leonard, in inventing this notion of the Venusians that they that you can share in their memories, means that Ian and Barbara, for the first most potent time ever, that's not fair actually, sense rights maybe, but really start to touch base with an alien species that's incredibly different from them. And it's really, really charming. It's a really lovely book. I have to be honest, I think some of the mix of bleak and daft is a little bit fierce at times, but it kind of works. And I really felt for these Venusians after a while. Barbara's got a mate whose name escapes me, who's lovely. Ian basically gets adopted by one. That's really charming as well. They have all these wacky schemes by which they're going to help Venus survive. They invent rockets made out of wood, and the big plan is to do with volcanoes. I shan't spoil it in case you track down a copy. Anyway, it made me really reflect on Hartnell. What an interesting Doctor, because really, truly, I think Troughton invented the Doctor. Hartnell was playing this mysterious character, and I don't know how much of the background to the Doctor Hartnell sketched out in his head. But it's really only after he changes, isn't it, that we recognise the Doctor as something a little bit special here. Although Hartnell's special, of course, I'm not dissing Hartnell. But it's really nice to revisit that with the benefit of hindsight, to be able to look at a story in the context of what we know about Doctor Who and do a little messing about retconning the emotional development of some characters. Anyway, what a TARDIS crew. We never saw Doctor and Ian and Barbara. This programme wasn't set up for that type of grouping back then. But it would have worked. I really think it would have worked, especially with the mistrust gone and the growing relationship between Ian and Barbara, and the obviously the relationship between them and the Doctor. It's really lovely, actually. And I remember now, I mean, bless, William Russell's still with us, isn't he? But my gosh, Barbara, what a companion. What a companion. Love Ian, obviously, and love Bill. But of those initial four, I think it's probably Barbara that was the MVP. She was superb, absolutely superb. Anyway, Venusian Lullaby. You know, I enjoyed that book a lot. It's some interesting ideas. Had a good time. My next book, for those of you interested, is going to be this one, Twilight of the Gods. This is my Troughton story. It's got a bit battered up there, nobody minds. But it's got Zarbian. Now, you'll recall, those of you that were way back then, my feelings about the Web Planet. In Doctor Who magazine, RTD and I think Phil Collinson were reminiscing about the Web Planet. In the same way that we all should about stories that are a bit naff. But they say they love the Web Planet. I don't love the Web Planet. But let's be honest, interesting concept, the Zarbian Menoptera. Get this as the blurb on the back. They're Menoptera, the Doctor exclaimed. And this must be Fortis. But why are you treating them like this? They're peaceful people, not slaves. What's been happening here? Fantastic. That sounds just like Troughton, doesn't it? By Christopher Bullis. Brilliant. So I'm really looking forward to reading this. Listen, if you watch this, I hope you've enjoyed it. Some old Doctor Who semi-canon fiction. What could be better? Happy November. Happy 60th anniversary. It's coming very soon. Cheerio.